welcome you to tonight's talk, where we're going to talk about language learning with Chat GPT. Let me just let somebody else in. So yeah, we're just starting now. We're just going to talk about how are you going to use Chat GPT Whisper in to basically set up this language learning role-playing thing that I wanted to get going. Okay, so yeah, everybody can see that now. Okay. Like I said, Mike, if I screw up and I turn the slides off, just let me know if I'm letting somebody in. Okay. So my name's Godfrey Nolan. So I'm from Ireland. So like the British Isles, we have a pretty bad reputation about learning languages. I've had a kind of a love-hate relationship with learning languages. So I did 5 years of French in what we call secondary school, which is high school. And I came to the conclusion that if you're not talking French to somebody French, then you're really not going to learn it. So I tried all the usual things, especially over the pandemic. Okay, we're back again. So I tried a few things over the pandemic to try and recharge my French learning again. Did the Duolingo, and then lots of other things as well. There's also a website called italki, where you can actually talk to somebody, which is kind of cool. So I'll probably go back to that after I get my French up to a certain level, because there's kind of a level of embarrassment where you're trying to speak French. But I can read French pretty well, but I certainly can't speak French very well. So I had this idea in the back of my head that we should be able to do this with computers, but all the examples that I've seen over the years have been very, what I would call deterministic, and you're always training to a single conversation. So to quote the wonderful De La Soul, when you're learning French, it's like il est midi et demi, l'heure de déjeuner, écoutez and répétez. So that's always for me when I'm learning languages. It's something really basic, like it's 12:30, it's time for lunch. And then you get out into the real world, and the conversations just they're not the same each time. So they rapidly change, and they go in all sorts of directions. And you're sitting there kind of trying to figure out what people are saying. And it's just, I always find it a muddle. So basically, my options to date have been to find somebody online to talk to, and websites like italki, there's quite a few other ones too as well. Or because I live in Detroit now, I could take a drive to Montreal, and then that's probably the nearest French-speaking area. But that's kind of a lot of effort. So I'm trying to think about how do I get from my, hey, I can read French. It doesn't have to be French either. It could be anything. It could be German. Did German for a while. Could be Spanish. Could be, there are 24 languages, which I'll show you that Whisper supports. And there's bound to be more coming on stream. But when I started looking at ChatGPT, I'm thinking, okay, ChatGPT is exactly what I want, because it's not deterministic. The questions and answers just won't be the same each time. We don't get il est midi et demi. So it's going to work much better and give you way better training than the rote conversations, the linguaphone conversations that we've had in the past. So then I can drive to Montreal and not feel a fool when I'm trying to order my food or check into a hotel. So really, that's what I'm trying to get here today. I will tell you that there's a couple of good things. So I'm going to make the app that I have live and give you all a URL if you want to play with it afterwards, and I'll leave it up for this evening. I'm also giving you the code so you can play with it too. So if you have any things that you want to change or whatever, I think that would be great. If I'm not I used to be a developer, but I run a company now, so I don't do much development. But I think there's enough for people to get started and to kind of figure out how to take this proof of concept. Even if you just want to use it as a language learning tool, the code's there, you should be fine. So Whisper is part of the stable of applications from OpenAI. So OpenAI is the company that owns ChatGPT. So Whisper is their speech recognition engine. So it performs speech recognition, translation, and language identification. So basically, if you provide it with an audio file, it will return a transcript. It's got a pretty good speech recognition engine. So we're going to, first of all, just learn about how to use Whisper, and then see if we can combine everything together to come with our proof of concept, role-playing language learning module. The bad news is that Whisper is very English-based. So what you would think would just be a call to say, continue the conversation in French, for the moment you can't. I think that's probably going to change. Things are happening so fast. Like we had the news today that there's a new version of Llama coming out with like a free version of a free LLM with 405 billion parameters. So that's amazing. So this stuff is changing. So this is a point in time of what Whisper is and our speech recognition. But I think it's a really good time to just look at what's going on, because we can do the language learning. We can put something together to create something that kind of sort of works. So here's an example of using Whisper. So we're basically the call is this call. So if you've done the OpenAI before, if you looked at its OpenAI from the API, it's openai.chat.completions.create. But when it's Whisper, it's openai.audio.transcriptions.create. So kind of following the same thing. And I have here, there's a Steve Jobs speech that I took off the web. This comes from a O'Reilly book, which is called Developing Apps with Chat GPT. So I took this example from there. So basically all we do is we open this Steve Jobs file, we pass it to Whisper, and then just output the transcription. In a second, I got somebody else in. Okay, we're up to 10 people. This is great. So when you run this, you basically get the text version of whatever Steve Jobs said. So this is his commencement speech from Reed College from quite a while ago. So there's some great things that we do here. Okay, so we can transcribe things. So that's great. So a lot of times when I'm doing these talks, I realize that I'm doing just like there. I do whatever. So there are ways that you can take the YouTube transcript, and basically you can use Whisper. You can either take the video itself, and then if you don't have the transcript, you can use Whisper to create the transcript. And if you do have the transcript, then you can basically recreate what it is, but using a computer voice. So in this thing, what we're doing, the next section, you have instead of it being what was it before? Audio transcriptions.create. Now we're doing audio.speech.create. So now we're using a text-to-speech engine. It's all part of the same part of Whisper. There are a bunch of different voices. So you have Nova, Alloy. They're kind of mid-Atlantic type voices. As yet, you can't use your own voice, but they're pretty good at French and what I've tried so far, and they're pretty good at German. So as we'll see later on. So in this one, what I'm doing is it automatically is going to recognize that this is French, but you can do the same in English. But so le rapide Renault brun sauta par-dessus le champ passe. So the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog in French. So if you run that, and I'll walk through these demos just in a second when we get to the end of this Whisper section. And then you just output that to a file, and you've got a new French.mp3 file that you could use. So, you think you could do that for lots of different languages. So if you have a YouTube that's in English or in French and you want to convert it to English, you could go through this. So potentially I could take the video that we're going to do for this meetup, and I could put it in the couple of dozen languages that are out there, all the way from Afrikaans to Vietnamese. It does all the standard European languages. It has some unusual ones in there. So there's Welsh in there. There isn't any Gaelic, but there's Tamil, there's Urdu, there's Hindi, Hungarian, Icelandic. And I'll show you the link if you want to look up to see what your favorite language is, if you want to put it in there. And also it gives this kind of Midwestern, mid-Atlantic thing. So you have a neutral voice, and you can get your choice of different voices that you want to use. I haven't heard anything yet about. I know that Microsoft, for example, allows you to do a version of your voice. This is not something that we'd use to do any fake videos or anything like that. It's just it's not going to take on somebody else's voice. It's basically you have a dozen or so different voice types that you can use, and that's what you're stuck with to date. Okay, so here is if we want to just create it in English, we do the same thing again, and because we put the input in English, it immediately recognizes that it's English, so it then says it with an English accent. And it does the Alloy, Nova or Alloy or any of them, when it sees French, it's going to try to do a French accent, which we'll see in a second. Okay. So we are reading files, we're reading MP3s, we're creating MP3s. The different voices that you have, Ally, Echo, Fable, Oinks, Nova, and Shimmer. Or is that Onyx? Onyx. So the Onyx. I went too fast. And in the link, in the resources, because typically what I do each month is I'll go through my stuff and whatever I reference, I'm going to put in the resources. You can go through and there's a little button where you can test to see everything, each of the different languages, and just choose whichever one makes sense for you. Okay, so we can also translate our French back to English. So we have our French MP3 that we just created. So now we have audio translations that create. So we can do text to speech, we can do translations, and then we can do create a French MP3 with a mid-Atlantic voice. So when we run this, basically what we get is the quick brown fox jumped over the lazy dog, and we get back original sentence. So we have the elements of all the things that we need to do to create our role-playing model. But let's have a look at some demos first, just to show you how this works. Okay, yeah, while I'm here, let me show you. Here's the speech to text. So this is the URL for all the stuff in the Whisper model, how you call it, what are we have transcriptions create, we have translations. Here are all the supported languages. So if you're interested in this is pretty cool. You can also put timestamps in here too as well if you're trying to use timestamps to match up with what you're doing with your videos, which I think is pretty cool. What else do I have? Here's the italki website. So if you want to actually talk to real people, depending on what you want to do, that's pretty cool too as well. Here is the code for my language learning app, which we're going to talk about in a second. But what I wanted to show first is I just wanted to go through some of the examples. So this is VS Code. First one that we had was transcribe. So we have media file, Steve Jobs speech, which is here. Basically what I'm doing is just trying to create a transcription. This is going to take a few seconds, so let me run it first. For those of you who haven't been to any of the talks before, basically the way it works is that you have to import OpenAI. You have to do pip install OpenAI, pip install config to get these two things in. You have to get an API key from the playground, so playground OpenAI. So you have to sign up for that. It's about $20 a month. Sorry, it's not $20 a month. You just buy $20 worth of API credits, and then when you use them up, you just buy another $20. So that is completely different from the GPT Plus subscription, which is $20. So if you want to do any of this API stuff, you have to go to playground.openai.com, sign up, get an API key, and then put your API key into your config.py file. Go check some of the older YouTubes for this meetup, and you should be able to see how that works. I'm just linking my OpenAI key here. And then basically what I'm doing is opening the file, Steve Jobs speech, and then running this transcriptions. It's using the Whisper 1 model and pointing at the file, and then eventually it's going to give me the transcription. One thing I will say, and there it is. One thing just in time, I will say is that if you see import Whisper in any of the code here, that means it's using the older version of the API. And you shouldn't be using that at all. No accounts. So everything is part of OpenAI, and you can do transcriptions and you can do translations and whatever else you want to do within that. So just a quick note of warning there. So okay, so now what we have is we don't have that file yet. So we're going to do our text to French. So we're going to create our file. Going to create this French file, this MP3 file. So we are going to say again Python. The only thing that's changed here is instead of it being transcribe, it's now speech create. And hopefully we should see the French showing up here. It's also giving a deprecation warning that I haven't seen before this month, which is basically saying you should be using response stream to file. And then in the app, which is what we're going to talk about with our later on, which is a role-playing app, we do actually use the stream to file because there wasn't a way around it. But you can still use this version, and it's fine for the moment. So then we have this French.mp3. I don't know if you're going to be able to hear this. Mike, I can't hear it. Yeah. I will upload it so people can play it. But it's you can just take my word for it for the moment. Oh, you can't hear anything. That is really annoying. Let me see what I can do. Is there anything I can do to fix that? Hmm. Huh. Okay. Well, we have a meetup, so let me go to the meetup and I'll just post it there for the people. Um, okay, bear with me. No, and I can't do that either. Should have tested this before. Sorry about that. Whereabouts? Dropbox? Okay. Oops. All right. So I'm OBS. What is OBS? Okay. Okay. Well, let me put it in the chat then so you guys can do it. Works. Whisper works really well in Spanish as well. Yeah, I'm. That's the next thing I want to do, is to start doing it in Spanish. I need to get my French up to speed, and then once I have that, I should be able to do the next stage, which would be Spanish, and then maybe go back and do German. I would really like to be a polyglot. I think that's really what this is all about. Is I want to be able to do that. All right. So okay. So that was we have the French. Put that into the chat, so you should be able to see that. What was the next one? So we can translate it back. Okay, so now we can translate it back. Um, Translates it back, and then finally we have our text to speech. So this is just going to create an English version of the what we just did in the French. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. So again, this is creating, and then the only thing that's changed, a slightly different voice here. The thing that's changed is it's got the it's got, first of all, it's got the voice ally, and we were using Nova before, so we can try that. And then the other one is that because it's in English, it's just automatically recognizing it's English, so it's going to give it the classic mid-Atlantic voice. But if you got to play with if you got to listen to the French, you can hear it actually does try to do a French accent. That's cool. So we have everything that we need. We have the three things. So we have, um, if I'm going to say something in French, it's going to be able to translate it back into English. I'm going to translate it back into English. What I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, what would be the answer if I was trying to check into a hotel? If I said, hello, I want to check in, and then it's going to translate that back into French again. And then we're going to use the audio capability, which of course we don't have here, but I can share that video too as well to show you what it looks like. And then at the end, when we run this, I'm going to, because we're using a thing called Gradio, I'm able to share it live. So I can put my link up and you guys can play with it for as long as it's running on my machine, which is probably going to be the rest of the night. And of course, I'm going to give you the code. So if you want to do it yourselves, basically all you need is VS Code, and just make sure that you install the right libraries. I'll tell you about that too. And then you can run it for as long as you like and change the different things to change languages or change the role. So let's get back to where we were. Okay, so that was our demo. So now we're back to here again. So we're somebody who's going to check into a hotel. We have all the tools now to create our proof of concept. So I'm using Gradio, which is a user interface, because it's pretty simple. It's pretty good at creating simple audio proof of concepts. It's great at doing lots of simple proof of concepts for any machine learning. So instead of you try to do it from the command line all the time, which can get really annoying, Gradio is just great at giving you a simple user interface, which is really easy and quick to create for whatever it is you're trying to do with our Chat GPT or other machine learning models. So the idea here is that we click on record, we start to have our conversation, and then on the other side, what's going to happen is the Chat GPT is going to take my French, it's going to turn it into English. It's going to say, give me some sort of response that we're going to get back, which is going to be a series of responses, a series of conversations. Every time I say something, it's going to give me a response back. We're going to take that and convert it into French, and then when we convert it into French, we're going to stream it to the web, and of course, that's going to work. So I'm assuming that this is not going to work for you guys as it's playing, but I'll show you what it looks like, and then the good news is you don't hear my absolutely appalling French pronunciation, so that's good. So over here, it's basically, what can I do for you today? And it's one of the things that it does do is it acts like a real person. So it's never going to give you a rote response. It's going to go, do you want to speak English? Which is something that would happen to you. But it's going to ask you the same basic questions that you're going to get asked in the real world. Okay, so let me take that. Let me see if I can get you that. I'll put that up in Dropbox too as well, and then I'll share the link. That is under my videos. Okay, again, just put it in the chat. Let me just make sure that you actually have that. The second one is share, copy link. Yep, so the second one will definitely work if you want to try that out. Okay, let's get back to what we do to actually program it. So we have these steps. So basically we have 5 steps. So step 1 is we're going to read in the French audio, convert it into English. We're going to use the English text to generate a response because, like I said, everything is Anglo-centric when we start talking with ChatGPT. And then we're going to convert the response back into French text. And then we're going to stream the response and update the text on the screen. So read in the French audio, generate a response, convert the response back into French text, and just say translate it back, and then we stream that out to the web, and then we update the text on screen. I'm hard coding it to French, but you have the code, so you can change it to Japanese. Mike, that's for you, or you can change it to any of those 24 languages that are in there. I'm also hard coding the role, but again, you can change that by just changing the system message at the top. So the first thing we said is step 1, we're going to read in the French audio and convert it into English. So this is the same as what we did before. So we have our audio translations that creates, taking it from Gradio. It's taking what I'm saying, my bonjour, whatever it is. And we are using this in our messages. So when you call OpenAI, you basically have 3 types of messages. You have a system message, which is, here's what I want you to do. And I'll show you in a second exactly what it is. So that's basically, hey, you're a hotel receptionist. And then we have the user messages, which is if you were typing into Chat GPT in the web interface, that's what a user message is. And then we have an assistant message, which is a terrible name because assistants means something else in Chat GPT 2 as well. And then the assistant message is whatever the response is from Chat GPT. We need to save our system, user, and assistant messages in an array because we want to make sure that every time that we have a conversation with ChatGPT with our role-playing language learning model, that it remembers everything that else that happened before. And if you don't save it in an array and you just send it a single thing, it's basically going to think you've just arrived at the hotel and asked it the first question. So you got to make sure that you're saving it in an array and presenting the entire array each time of messages. Okay, so then the second thing we have to do is, now that we've got my crappy French, and converted it into English, we have to generate a response. So the role is the system messages. I told you there's system, so that's what we're saying. You're a hotel receptionist. Your job is help customers check into the room. I changed this a few times because the Gradio has this thing where everything is running in a loop, and I wanted to make sure that the role playing didn't keep on answering me questions, and I had done that a few times. So I gave it extra direction, which is you only respond when a customer asks you a question. Do not start the conversation. Wait for a question. The customer does not speak your language, so keep your responses simple and clear. So I want this to be simple French, simple language, nothing complicated, so that at least you have a chance of being able to respond. And then if you get better, then you can up the level, so you can keep your responses simple and clear. You can say, tell them there's no room, and then you have to deal with that, stuff like that. So it's up to you to change whatever you want the message to be. Okay, so we've taken our French, changed it, converted it into English, and now we're going to generate a response. So our response is going to come back in this response to, which is an assistant message, because that's what ChatGPT says to you. So ChatGPT is going to say, welcome, can you give me your name and a confirmation number, something like that. Okay, so then we want to convert that back into French. And the way that we do that is we say, just translate the following text into French. If you want to do something else, you would just change it to something else. I am using GPT 3.5 Turbo here. I might change that to 4 Omni or 4 Omni Mini, which is one of the newer models, because I have noticed that a couple of times it's translated it into French, but it's also kept the English. So that can be a bit kind of disconcerting. So if you see that, if you want to change it, I would recommend changing this model to something else. And then if you want to change the language to Spanish or German or Welsh, then off you go, or Japanese. This is where you do that here too as well. Okay, and the next bit's a little bit harder, because the main thing that's happening is this chunk in the middle. So what we're doing is I'm streaming the response, and I want to stream it in using the Ally voice. I'm using text-to-speech to stream. And I'm not streaming it to a file because this is living on a web server. So, and I'm also trying to get rid of that deprecation error that we had. So I'm using speech with streaming response create. And then as the chunks are coming out, I just want to get the answer immediately. I don't want it to be waiting for it to be finished. And we use a library called Pi Audio to do this. And that's what's happening at the top and at the bottom. So we are opening the stream, we're converting it, and as we're converting it, we're just spewing out whatever text it's giving us back in French, and then we're closing the stream. So we convert the French text to audio and stream the response. Essentially, was what we're doing in 4. And then the other thing which I found is really helpful, because a lot of time what's going on is I'm hearing the French, but I'm getting confused exactly what they're saying, because the text-to-speech does a really good job. It's pretty fast. So I don't know if my language comprehension is up to the speed. So what I wanted to do as well is I just want to update the text on the screen. So in our little output thing, it gives me what the French is, so I can see it written down. And once I can see it, they understand what's going on. And I think that's a really good way for helping people to learn the language. So not only are you talking to somebody, you're just also getting to see what the text is. And remember, there are other apps out there doing this at the moment. I know that Duolingo have a Duolingo Max, but they're charging, I think, $50 a month for this, which you can get this for next to nothing, basically taking this approach. And then the last thing is, here's how you use the Gradio to create that simple interface that I showed you before. So we import the Gradio library, and then we're just using the interface, which is the easiest one to use. I do have a link. Here's the, if you want to learn more about Gradio, it's gradioapp.docs, and then there's tons of information about how to get started. Lots of examples out there. So basically what do we have here? So we have the first parameter is function equals transcribe. So that's what that's the whole big function that we just went through bit by bit. Live equals true. So we're basically saying that this is going on all the time, that it keeps looping. And then the inputs that we have is essentially, we just have, it's a microphone. There are lots of examples of Gradio out there. Gradio also did a major update fairly recently. So if you see source equals microphone, it's changed to sources now because you can have multiple sources. So just make sure that if you see some old code, that if it's not working for you, just change source to sources and you should be good. I ran into that a few times recently. And then the outputs equals text. So when we run our function transcribe and it returns a chat, it's going to return that text. And Gradio knows that it's going to put it in the box on the right-hand side to do that. And then we launch it. And that's all we really need to do to have our interface. So it's the smallest web page I've ever seen in my entire life. We can also do this cool thing, which I will do when we get through this, which if we say share equals true, it will give us a public-facing URL, which everybody can play with. So although you can't hear what's going on, once we're done with this, I'm going to launch it. I'll let you guys have a play with it and tell me what you think. Okay, so we have, this is the Gradio. There's lots of really easy, simple clients that you can look at if you want to try out there. Here's the role playing again, which you can't see, and then some of the resources. So before I launch this, there's italki, which is you're talking to a real person. The prices for that are anywhere from 10, 15 bucks a chat to $50 a chat for somebody who's doing this as a profession. I got the feeling that they always wanted to get you into a subscription. So I tried it once or twice and I never went back to it because I didn't think I need to get enough experience talking before I could really get something out of that. And then the code is up here on Lingobot. I'll show you that in a second. And then lots more information about Whisper. A couple of things that I use for how to say check in a hotel in French. The quick start, and then I'm going to update this. This is the URL, but it's dead now. That's the one that I did earlier. Okay, so let me get out of this. And let me show you where the code is. So here's the code. We have Pi Audio. I had a bit of a problem with it was the microphone that I'm using. You need to have a really good microphone, and you need to make sure that you don't have much background noise. If you have any background noise, it's going to pick it up and think you're saying something, and it's going to try and translate it. And when it tries to translate it, the application is going to try and answer you. So you end up in this thing where you're trying to say something, and it's the Chat GPT has already returned its response. So my recommendation would be make sure that, I was just checking to see if there was, a lot of the time here was ... So I just checked to see that it's actually words. So make sure when you're doing this, use a really good microphone. If you have a headphones or something, I think that's probably the best way to go. We have our message here, which is our system message, your hotel receptionist. We have first thing, which is read in the French audio, convert it to English. And then I just have an if statement, because I'm going to skip that if it's just picking up garbage or white noise. Use the English text to generate a response, convert the response into French text, then convert the French text to audio and stream the response, and then update the text on the screen. And then finally, we have our Gradio to create a simple interface. So 78 lines of code, pretty simple. What are we importing? Gradio, which is the library for the web page, OpenAI, that's for Whisper, config, Pi Audio for outputting it, and RE is regular expressions, but you could probably get away with that. I just want to make sure that I open a Pi Audio at the start, so we have something going, and then I put these two here to open and close it. There might be a better way of doing all this code. Like I said, I'm not the best programmer in the world, but hey, it works. So let's get it going and see what happens. So this is VS Code. I just have a different theme than normal if you're not thinking this VS Code, because I think it's easier to see. So let me do this thing at the end. So I have share equals true now. So I'm going to run this and let you guys start playing with it. Assuming that I haven't made any terrible changes. So it's going to give us a local URL, and now we have this URL. So let me post that so you guys can play with it. And I'm going to leave that up for this evening, if you guys want to have a look at it. So basically, the last thing I gave you is a URL to talk to the French hotel receptionist, and let me know how you get on. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. Does anybody have any questions? Anything at all?
No.
Hey, Ricardo, how are you? Yeah, I will be trying the Spanish because, hey, I live in the States, so I got to get my Spanish up to speed. Oh my God, it's awful. But hey,
Well, we
now
can
I don't have to
practice.
worry about the embarrassment. I can just get embarrassed in front of a computer. So at least then I can get, to go from, I think the when you're trying to learn a language, you go from the Duolingo to using something like this, and then after that you can kind of start going to conversational sessions and meetups or whatever. It's much easier to talk Spanish in the States than it is French. Even though we're really close to Detroit, to Windsor, I would have thought that there'd be lots of French-speaking people in Windsor because of the learning system they have set up in Canada is supposed to be both languages. But all my friends in Windsor, none of them speak French. So yeah, good luck with that. Okay, I don't know what I'm going to do next month just yet. I think what's going to happen is we haven't done anything on assistance yet. That's not the assistance that I'm talking about here. I'm talking about assistance within the playground. Let me go to the playground and show you that just for a second. So let me share that too as well. So assistants are basically setting up kind of a cheap version of a custom Chat GPT, so we can set up the same thing that we would do uh, for our API, but we have lots of other stuff that we can do because we can add code interpreters, which means that it can do maths because ChatGPT can't on its own. We can add all sorts of things. We can go call APIs if we want to. So we can add files. So we can have, if we want to have a really simple retrieval augmented generation type thing, we can just add some files and get it to ask questions of the files that we want. So I'll probably do something on assistance next month, but I haven't figured out exactly what actually assistant I'm going to do yet, but that's probably what's coming next month. Okay. And if nobody's got anything else, I will let you guys go. I will leave my computer on for the rest of the evening. So if you guys want to play, you're more than welcome to have a look. And if anybody's got any feedback of how I can improve this or how I can change this, then I'm all ears. Okay.